Jaxson Dart's season in jeopardy. Jonathan Taylor making an MVP push. Matthew Stafford looking like possibly the best quarterback in the NFC. Pete over here with Player Profiler. We're going to break it all down right here on the top 10 takeaways. What's going on, folks? Pete Nova here with Player Profiler. Super excited to be back here with Week 10's top 10 takeaways and help you win your fantasy football matchups, right? There's a lot that went on, a lot of injuries, some recent firings, some recent players possibly going on IR, some guys coming off of IR. We're going to talk about it all here today on the show on Player Profiler. If you are not already, make sure you subscribe, make sure you like, make sure you comment, whatever questions you might have. As always, we're going to do a mailbag at the end of the show. So with Monday Night Football coming up, is there, a Monday Night Miracle that you need? Are there players that you need to make decisions on? Are there trades that you have sitting on the table that you're not sure to pull the trigger? Let me know. Drop it in the comment section. I will make sure, as always, to come back to them at the end of the show and answer everything that you might have. Let's jump into my first takeaway from this week's action, and it's just going to be nice and easy. We're going to go over the injury roundup, some players that have gone down, some guys that could miss a lot of time, some guys that might not miss much time at all, and how that might impact some other players. First guy we'll talk about here is Geno Smith, hobbled and hurt. That leg did not look great in that matchup against Denver on Thursday Night Football. Thankfully for him and the Raiders, they do have a mini bye, so he's got a couple extra days to get right, but we haven't heard any news on if that's going to be something that he will miss time with. Considering it's kind of a lost season at this point, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to give him some extra time to get healthy, and maybe throw out Aiden O'Connell, right, who just came back from being injured. So we'll see how that goes, but something to monitor for those that are, owning him in superflex leagues. Then you also look at J.K. Dobbins. This appears to kind of be the big one. He gets the hip drop tackle. I don't even know what a hip drop tackle is, to be honest with you guys, but he gets the quote-unquote hip drop in that game, and unfortunately, his foot ends up getting injured in this one. He ends up hobbling off, then comes back, finishes the game, but then tweets out about his frustrations with refs not calling the hip drop tackle. And overall, I'm getting a little bit of bad vibes here that he's going to miss extended time. There were reports that he's going to go get a second opinion on the foot injury. And when you hear second opinions for players, that usually means they didn't like the first one. And that usually means, if you're connecting the dots, that they'll probably miss more time than we hope. So RJ Harvey, of course, becomes, an RB2 immediately. I think many will tell you Tyler Bidet is the player to go grab if Harvey's not available. I think it'll be Jaleel McLaughlin. I think he's the better guy to take a chance on. He hasn't really been on the field just because they don't want to carry 4 running backs on the active roster plus a fullback. And Tyler Bidet is the one that's playing more special teams. Then you look at Woody Marks. He returned with the shoulder, but he also had that weird it looked like almost like an Achilles injury. I think it was a fake injury. We'll see if they come out and find him or suspend him, because I don't know. I mean, I don't think they're going to go as far as to suspend, but I mean, they have to kind of set a precedent for these fake injuries to get a timeout. You see him kind of, jogging off the field, then kind of just as he gets to the sidelines, falls to the ground, grabs his back of his ankle, and you think, oh, shoot, is this an Achilles? And then he makes his way back into the game, on like the next possession, I think. But something to monitor there. I think he's going to be fine. Trevion Henderson returned. He had the knee injury. Zay Jones, Achilles. That's not one that's super impactful for us. Zonovan Knight with the ankle. Devontae Adams with the back. He seems okay. There was an Instagram post joking around about how he's getting too old at this point, and you see Devontae Adams is setting up his route to go out, and then he grabs his back. It's like early in the fourth quarter when they were up already. And I'm not saying he pulled himself out of the game on purpose, but I think he's going to be okay. There were some jokes, and he seemed to be joking about it. Garrett Wilson's the concerning one. He comes back possibly a week too early, re-aggravates that knee, and Unfortunately, frustrating enough. If you own him, I think we might miss him for another week or two at least. And if they deem it bad enough, I mean, do they shut him down? I don't know. Right, it's a lost season for the New York Jets, who do pull out a win. But then you look at Jackson Dart, who another concussion. We're going to talk about him a little bit later. Dalton Kincaid pulls up with the hamstring with a flat tire. Unfortunate, because I expected him to have a big day, and I think he would have had a big day if he doesn't go down in that game. So something to monitor there. Don't like hamstring injuries. Those tend to linger. Rashad Bateman with the ankle injury. Terrell Jennings, the backup to Trevion Henderson, goes out and doesn't return with the knee injury. So that's one to monitor as well, because we talk about this. When is Henderson going to get the full workload? We saw what happened when he did get the full workload, and he exploded onto the scene, and we'll talk about that as well. Let's go ahead and move over to the number 2 takeaway. And again, we're starting off nice and easy with these. Jonathan Taylor MVP, right? I think he's established himself in that MVP conversation. If Jonathan Taylor were to win MVP, he would be the first non-quarterback since Adrian Peterson did it in 2012. I think it's very, very possible Jonathan Taylor does. I sprinkled a little bit of money on him. He's plus 650. I put it down and I got him at plus 800 yesterday. He's plus 650 behind Drake May at plus 275, Matthew Stafford at plus 300, and Patrick Mahomes at plus 500. If the Colts can continue to win games and they end up being the number 1 seed, I could very well see it happening. It's not going to go to Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is plus 6,500 right now to win MVP. So I doubt they would do that. But digging into Jonathan Taylor's year so far, it's been awesome. I don't have to sit here and tell you, but 32 rushes, 224 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a game winner in overtime. Extremely impressive. And then per SB Nation, he ranks top 5 in both categories for scrimmage yards, where he has 2,000. He's on pace for 2,378, and then 29 total touchdowns he'd be on pace for, which is 5th all-time for scrimmage yards and 2nd all-time for total touchdowns in a season. And that would rank top 5 in both categories, which has never been done. So we'll definitely see if Jonathan Taylor can continue the momentum here. But needless to say, if you drafted Jonathan Taylor in fantasy football, there's a good chance that you are at least in the playoffs. I mean, very, very unlikely that you're not even in the playoffs. And that's probably putting it lightly. You're probably a top team in your league right now. And Jonathan Taylor, his dynasty value is going to come into question all offseason. Is he going to get the Saquon Barkley treatment where, people don't want to pay up and spend up for him, and people are also not buying him because of the age and the tread on the tires? But there's also a knock for Taylor. Similar molds here, right? 2 guys in Saquon and JT that dealt with injuries before coming into this year and last year, and both guys have amazing, amazing seasons. We do have some Monday Night Football coming up. Obviously, the Eagles are playing the Packers, and we talk about Saquon Barkley. That should be an interesting game. Excited to see that one. I know I'll have some DFS lineups, and I'll put some bets down on the line in that one. But if you are considering DFS, you should check out the DFS Dominator right here at Player Profiler.
So let's put our hoodie on, and let's talk about Player Profiler's DFS Dominator. It has a cash game optimizer that leverages the projections from Billy and Bradley and Evan and that Player Profiler AI engine to create cash game lineups that certainly have a high floor, but also give you that ceiling. Now, you've probably heard about the most powerful tool of all, our Lineup Genius. We know winning GPPs requires a completely different approach, which is why our Lineup Genius takes you through the process of selecting the quarterbacks in the juiciest matchups. Then it highlights the stacks and runbacks that are available, lets you pick the chalk level, lets you pick the level of correlation with a number of other proprietary settings available to you. Click a button and it generates hundreds of lineups to be imported into FanDuel and DraftKings. And it's just $45 a year, not a week, a year. So go fight fire with a Player Profiler DFS Dominator.
Yeah, I mean, DFS, I've dabbled a little bit more this year than I did in years past, but I'm enjoying it this year. I'm using Player Profiler's DFS Dominator to help me out to win some of those lineups, right, and kind of rank pretty decently high. I can't sit here and tell you I'm a savant yet at DFS. It's my first year actually really, really strongly playing it, but done well so far. And the Player Profiler DFS Dominator has helped me along the way. Let's go ahead and look at number 3. And we talked a little bit about it, but Trevion Henderson's breakout. We've talked about TreVeyon Henderson on this show at nauseum, right? Whether it's my show, other shows on Player Profiler, right? I mean, I love TreVeyon Henderson coming out. I like the landing spot. I mean, I maybe would have liked it better if he went to the Bears with Ben Johnson, but I mean, you figure with Josh McDaniels, what he's done with this kind of archetype running back, we expected him to be good, right? And I made some pretty heavy claims about TreVeyon Henderson and my expectations for this season, and they have not come to fruition. But Ramondre Stevenson out for 2 weeks, right? So far, there were reports that the team was trying to make a trade. I even had seen that there was a rumor linked that Tony Pollard was a deal that they were sniffing around on, but because of Mike Vrabel and the ownership stuff with the Titans and him, the owner pretty much blocked any trade with the Patriots, which if that's true, I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know. I could never be a fan of a team, I could understand not wanting to be a fan of a team anymore when ownership is like that. That's the only time I'll give anybody a grace period for changing teams and fandom is if your owner is just flat out just absolutely awful and you're miserable because of the owner. Like the Jets come to mind as well as another one of those teams. But TreVeyon Henderson back-to-back weeks with 12 plus fantasy points. He has a career day with 28 fantasy points, 14 carries, 147 yards, 2 touchdowns, and just 1 catch for 3 yards, right? I mean, this wasn't where, his total was inflated, right? He had 2 really, really big runs. He almost had a third big run early on in the game where he could have taken it to the house and he just got tripped up. And I think the big thing that we saw is the Patriots using him on the outsides, right? Not running him up the gut as much, but using him more on the outsides, which if you've watched him, right, it makes sense. Like they were just pounding him up the gut, and that's just not his style. It's not how he's going to be effective. You need a guy like him to get out in space, right, and stretch runs, outside zones, pitch plays. Like those are the kinds of plays you want for a player like TreVeyon Henderson. And we saw them utilize him in that way a little bit. Terrell Jennings leaves the game with a knee injury. I don't know how long that's going to be. Obviously no Gibson and no Ramondre Stevenson, right? So does this carve out TreVeyon Henderson's role where they say, look, we got to stop being stubborn at this point. We know we know this is a good player. We know we have talent here. Like we got to use him, right? I mean, TreVeyon Henderson was a big reason they won that football game. I mean, that's a really, really good Buccaneers defense against the run. And, TreVeyon Henderson had a phenomenal day. So props to him. Hopefully Vrabel and the Pats, they get over their stubbornness of using him. I don't know. It doesn't sound like the kid's a bad locker room guy. It doesn't really seem like there are issues from a character perspective, but for whatever reason, TreVeyon Henderson has been buried. Maybe, hopefully he carved out a role for himself. We'll see if it continues going forward when Stevenson does eventually come back. Let's move over to our next takeaway. And Tez is real. Tez Johnson is real. I was a little skeptical because, when Mike Evans was out initially, not after he broke the collarbone, right? But when Mike Evans was out, when Godwin was out, I said, you know what? Sterling Shepard's probably the guy I trust, but it's really Cade Otton and then Tez Johnson at 3. I didn't want to chase the volume, right? Depending, right? I wouldn't mind taking a chance on Tez, but I wasn't going to blow my load on him and go and spend a ton of money. But Tez has been phenomenal, right? The last 3 weeks, he's averaging 15.1 points per game. Obviously, no Bucky Irving. No Chris Godwin definitely helps, but 6.6 yard targets per game over that span, a touchdown in every single game, right? Do we see some regression there? Probably when Bucky Irving comes back, when Chris Godwin comes back, but Chris Godwin and Bucky Irvings are complete wild cards. And I got to be honest with you. I mean, Todd Bowles is one of the worst coaches when it comes to these injuries. I mean, we've seen time and time again where he even made a comment to the effect of that, like, Chris Godwin could have came back last year or something to that effect. I mean, so Todd Bowles, the injury speak, the coach speak on that has always been really bad. I don't know Chris Godwin when he's coming back, but Bucky Irving, they said there's no timeline, and that was today reported by Todd Bowles in his press conference with the media. I think Tez Johnson has solidified himself. They run a lot of 3 wide receiver sets in Tampa Bay. So even when Chris Godwin comes back, right, can he sustain being on the field? And I think he can. Now, Jalen McMillan is also the wild card, right? McMillan's coming back as well. And so what does that mean for Tez Johnson? We'll see, but a 74% snap share over this span, 11 yards per route run, which is a really good sign. Yards per route run is one of the better fantasy markers to kind of predict success in the future and sustain success. And like I said, not sure how he fares the rest of the season with McMillan coming back, with Godwin coming back. But from a dynasty perspective, I'm definitely buying the talent here. Mike Evans, is he going to come back, right, with Chris Godwin? Does he ever return to form? Not sure. Obviously, you have McMillan there. There's a lot of mouths to feed. I wouldn't pay more than a 3rd round pick. I don't know if you're getting him for just a 3rd round pick. Maybe a player swap is possible as well, but he's definitely somebody I'm buying into the talent. At least he's extremely, extremely talented. And again, you're talking about a room where they've had injuries. Chris Godwin, even if he stays, if Mike Evans goes, Godwin's still had issues staying healthy. So it should open up things. And this is a team that loves to run 3 wide receiver sets. But let's move over to our next takeaway. Jalen Waddle, top 15 rest of the season. And I think that's honestly being a little bit conservative for Jalen Waddle. I think top 12 is probably the right call. As long as Miami's offense doesn't absolutely implode, but their offense has been okay. I mean, give them some credit. They just took care of the Bills, and Jalen Waddle has been a monster over the span of time since Tyreek Hill's been gone. Wide receiver 6 since Hill has been gone from weeks 5 to now. That's 6 games. He's been wide receiver 6 over that span, averaging 16 points per game during that time period. Playoff schedule looks pretty good, right? He gets the Steelers, he gets the Bengals, he gets the Bucks, right? Joe Burrow and the Bengals, that's probably going to be a high-scoring game against a Miami Dolphins defense that's not very good. Now, they've been better over the last couple weeks, but still not very good. They're not a top 15 unit. Burrow is going to be back, right? We're going to talk about that a little bit later. And then the Steelers, right? Their defense has been susceptible to giving up points to the wide receiver position. We just saw Ladd McConkey have 100 yards, and we just know that secondary, they're very much big play hunters, where they give up big plays to make big plays. But when you also look at Waddle, right? He gets Washington this week, which, I mean, I expect him to carve them up and be another top 10 option. I mean, Washington's been absolutely terrible in the secondary. That defense is atrocious. They just got absolutely dismantled by the Lions, which is not surprising. But the week before that, JSN went off. We've seen tons and tons of wide receivers just absolutely run through that secondary. I expect Waddle to continue. Last note on Waddle, 25% target share every single week but one over the span of time, with Tyreek Hill being out. So, I mean, there's really nobody else that's stepped up, right? I mean, you saw Darren Waller and that was a flash in the pan. It was fun for a little bit, but I mean, I tried to sell Darren Waller everywhere I had him in Dynasty, and I could not find a single person that wanted to take him, because they thought, just like I thought, the inevitable was going to happen, which it did, where Darren Waller was going to get hurt. You have Malik Washington, who's kind of been up and down. He's not a target monster. It's really Devon Achane and Waddle that are commanding very, very large target shares in this offense. And I expect that to continue for the rest of the season. Let's take a look at number 6 here. Chris Olave target volume. I mean, with Rashid Shaheed being traded to the Seattle Seahawks, it opens up even more volume for Chris Olave, who was already a target monster prior. He goes over to the Seattle Seahawks. Chris Olave ends up staying. Unfortunate for Chris Olave, and probably for us. I mean, the volume, I don't know if the volume would have been what it is anywhere else than it would have been with the Saints, but the efficiency, the quality of those targets is something that we would have liked a nice bump if he was traded, which unfortunately he doesn't. But when you look at Chris Olave, 8 targets this week, he also got a 62-yard touchdown, and that's significant, right? Rashid Shaheed was that field stretcher, that guy that was always getting those deep targets, and Olave's depth of target this year was really, really low. I mean, a lot of his games were like 6 receptions for 50 yards, right? Like a lot of these like high volume games, but not high, yardage. And it just was not a lot of pushing the ball down the field with him. We see Tyler Shuck and him connect on a 62-yard touchdown. That's encouraging, at least. We'll see if they can continue. That was obviously in a plus matchup, but Chris Olave has been extremely consistent. We know we're getting a really good floor with Chris Olave. Funny enough, Devon Vele was the only other wide receiver outside of Chris Olave to generate a target in this offense this game, and he only generated one. Devon Vele, they traded a 4th-round pick for him, when they traded him from Denver, which was kind of a head scratcher, and they're still not even using him. Now, it's only been one game, but it's not like he just got moved to this team. It's been with them and knows the system. So, I mean, I'm a little surprised that Vele didn't get involved a little bit more, and there's really not many other options. So Chris Olave, I mean, I don't expect that volume to dip much at all. So he's really, really good. At worst, he's going to be a wide receiver 300 team flex play, and he's been out producing that, of course. But you drafted him to really be your wide receiver 3/flex play, and he's outproduced that, and I expect him to continue rest of the season here. Number 8, the next takeaway, or I'm sorry, number 7, the next takeaway, and it's Jaxson Dart's health. And, it's, now that it's been reported today, Brian Daboll is gone. Maybe that is encouraging for Jaxson Dart's health, but rest of the season, I think there's jeopardy there. I don't think they're going to bench him, but per Ari Marav on Twitter, so far Jaxson Dart has been evaluated for a concussion 4 times this year. 4 times. He's taken 75 hits. He leads all quarterbacks with 25 designed runs, right? And that's despite the fact that he didn't start week 4. This is word for word from Ari. And also he had the ankle. He had the ankle and the hamstring injuries, right? So Brian Daboll gets fired, and honestly, I thought the Giants bringing back him and Joe Shane was a mistake. To be honest, I think both are not very good at their jobs. I think Daboll, unfortunately, could have been better somewhere else, but the fish rots at the top, and it's bad ownership, it's bad GM, and all that kind of trickles down. That's what you see with the Jets. But the fact that he led all quarterbacks with designed runs and took 75 plus hits, 75 plus hits, didn't lead the NFL, but still 75 hits. And he was evaluated for a concussion 4 times. And they did not care. Recklessly using him, right? In this game, we see him get evaluated for a concussion and leave the game against the Bears in that matchup. I mean, this is not a kid that's built to run the football a ton in the NFL. Sure, his legs, he's fast, he's athletic, right? He can make plays happen, but how sustainable is it to take those hits? Guys like Lamar Jackson don't take big hits because they're just that much better of an athlete, where sure, their body type doesn't project to be one that can take and withstand a lot of hits. And Lamar has had some injuries over the years, but it hasn't been due to concussions, taking big hits. It's usually hamstring injuries, like these soft tissue injuries. And Lamar is that much better of an athlete that he can avoid taking the big hits. Jaxson Dart has not learned that so far early on in his career. And, hopefully you hope that he can learn how to avoid those big hits going forward. But, we'll see what happens with Jaxson Dart. Joe Shane is apparently going to remain in the GM seat for, it looks like, at least another year. It's a very, very attractive job for any coach that's looking to land somewhere. I mean, the Mara family is very, 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 very invested in the people that they hire, which is why Shane is getting another year at least. And that's, why they take a long time to fire their coaches, right? They're not quick to pull the plug on these coaches that they have. And so whatever coach steps in there, you're going to have Malik Neighbors. Yes, he's coming off the ACL. You have Cam Scadaboo. He's coming off an injury. You have a great left tackle and a very, very solid right tackle. You have good foundation there. So it's encouraging, at least for whatever GM and whatever head coach takes this role. But you're also saddled up with a quarterback that you didn't draft. So we'll see. But Jaxson Dart needs to stay healthy. These concussions are becoming a little bit of a problem, and you worry, kind of similar to what Bo Nix is going through right now, where Bo Nix had the back injury last year. He's not running much this year, and you worry for fantasy if Jaxson Dart gets coached out of running as much because of the hits and because of the injuries. And what does that mean for fantasy in the future? We're talking Dynasty and we're projecting out, right? So we'll see what happens, but Jaxson Dart, hopefully he can stay healthy, because the concussions are no joke, and it's something that he's continued to have pop up. So we're going to move over to number 7 here. Just want to let you guys know we're going up to 10, of course. But again, if you guys have any questions, drop them in the comment section below about tonight, trade questions, fantasy questions, anything that you guys have. I will answer them as a mailbag at the end of the show. Let's go ahead and move on to number 8. And that's players trending up right now. So 4 players at the skill positions trending up, and then we'll do trending down, and then we'll talk about some stashes that are on my radar at the moment. And number 1 player trending up for me is Troy Franklin right now for Denver. 15.7 points per game over the last 4 weeks. I mean, he's been a wide receiver 2 over the last 4 weeks. He's clearly a favorite of Bo Nix right now. I know the offense has looked really, really spotty, but for whatever reason, Troy Franklin their relationship at Oregon definitely helps, but Bo Nix is consistently going to Troy Franklin. The only concern that I have is the drops for Troy Franklin have been an issue. There was an interception this past week that was a drop from Troy Franklin that was a bad one. He's had a lot of bad drops, and he's not the best at tracking deep balls, which has led to some issues. And I worry that Pat Bryant could start to get involved a little bit more. He's been very, very consistent, but we shall see. Then moving on to the next player trending up, it's Aaron Jones for me. 10.9 fantasy points per game over the last 3 weeks. Look, Aaron Jones is not lighting the world on fire, but this offense does look better with JJ than it does Carson Wentz. Now, I get it. There was still a tough game yesterday, not last night, yesterday, depending on what time zone you're in. But it was a tough game gosh, I almost want to say last week. It is technically last week, but it's really only a day ago. But Aaron Jones, 6.9 yards per carry, 6.09 yards per carry, and 4 targets per game. Over the last 3 weeks, he's clearly taken over as the lead back, and that's affected Jordan Mason. And we've talked about this backfield a decent amount, over the last couple weeks. Lamar Jackson's trending up. That feels pretty obvious, but with 2 games back, no signs of slowing down or not rushing as much. 21 points per game. He's still averaging 7 runs per game over the last 2 weeks, which is encouraging, right? Dealing with the hamstring injury, you kind of worry, is he going to kind of ease up on running as much? Clearly, that is not the case so far from what we have seen, which is very encouraging if you are a Lamar Jackson owner. Tight end, I do want to talk about his running mate, Mark Andrews at the tight end position, 11.13 points per game. Now, a lot of that is propped up over the touchdowns, right? Over the last 2 weeks, 3 touchdowns, 11.13 points per game over the last 2 weeks. But he scored touchdowns. He's averaging 4 targets per game over the last 2 weeks since Lamar Jackson has been back. And with tight ends, we've seen time and time again this year, riding the hot hands. This happens all the time. Hunter Henry, hot hand, fizzled out. Could happen the same with Mark Andrews. We'll see, right? Touchdowns are not very sticky, but what we do know is there is a lot where are a lot of times with these two specifically, Lamar and Mark Andrews, where they go on a tear where, just peppering Mark Andrews in the red zone for touchdowns, right? It happens all the time. Yes, Mark Andrews started the season off slow, and the volume's not what we want it yet, right? The yards aren't there, the catches aren't there, but the touchdowns have been there since Lamar came back. And again, tight ends like to run hot and cold, and right now, Mark Andrews could be on a heater, so I'm willing to ride that heater if you have him, depending on what your other options are, of course. But I think Mark Andrews right now for the next couple of weeks could be a top 12 play just off the fact alone of just riding that hot hand and what we've seen between the two of those when they get going in the end zone over the years at least. Players trending down. Let's talk about it right now. Joe Flacco, which is it's so funny to talk about Joe Flacco because it's kind of a back and forth, and I apologize. My throat is scratchy today. But it's kind of funny with Joe Flacco, right? I mean, it's Joe Flacco. Like, it's trending down, it's trending up. Like, you sit there and say, who cares? It's just Joe Flacco. Like, no one was expecting much for him. But Joe Flacco, over the last 3 weeks, most points per game for a quarterback in fantasy, 27.67 points per game per player profiler over the last 3 weeks. Now he's trending down because, look, Joe Burrow just got designated to return, and he's going to start practicing this week. Now, it doesn't mean Joe Burrow's coming back this week, but it means that Joe Flacco's shelf life is not much longer. What I would say is that if you're in deep dynasty leagues, I don't mind buying Joe Flacco once Burrow comes back, because who knows? Maybe he ends up being the long-term backup for Joe Burrow and you get some spot starts with him, right? That's really, I mean, maybe you give up like a fifth if you can get it, if Burrow comes back. But he's definitely trending down, of course, because he's not going to have a job soon. And he's clearly trending. I mean, it's only down from here. I mean, like I said, 27.67 points per game, most of any quarterback over the last 3 weeks. Wide receiver, we talked about Troy Franklin. Cortland Sutton is trending down right now, 10.4 points per game over the last 4 weeks. Part of that has to do with the offense being not very good. Sutton also dropped a touchdown again in the Dallas game. He's had some other drops, and it just hasn't seemed like him and Knicks have been on the same page. And part of that has been him going to Troy Franklin because of that. So Troy Franklin definitely trending down. Tight end position, Evan Ingram's trending down as already, but that might not be a big surprise. I mean, he's pretty much been a bust for fantasy to start the year. He had a couple weeks where he started to trend up and the targets were very, very high, and you started to feel very encouraged by it, where he was a top target earner for a couple weeks in the NFL when he came back, but it's just not really connecting. It's really not translating for fantasy points. Just 5 points per game over the last 4 weeks, 3 targets per game. And then at the running back position, Jordan Mason, right? A lot of players on the same team, even the same position, going opposite ways. Of course, it makes sense. Jordan Mason, 5.53 points per game over the last 4 weeks. Not going to harp on it too much. We talked about it on this show, but Aaron Jones, I think, has taken over this backfield as that guy to own, and that would be the player I would want for fantasy, right? Jordan Mason doesn't have a very high ceiling because he doesn't catch a lot of passes. But the last segment here, and then we'll get over to the mailbag for any questions that you guys might have, is players to stash right now. It's a couple players. Luther Burden is one of those players for me right now. DJ Moore 2 weeks ago had a really nice game for fantasy, and then this week, not very good. Luther Burden, I mean, he's a player that can do what DJ Moore can't, and that's work in isolation. He's very, very talented. We're getting to that part of the year where younger players start to get more opportunities. Now, a little bit different in this scenario where it's usually, hey, bad teams are willing to have, younger players get more opportunities and more chances. This is a team that's not bad. This is a playoff team right now. I expect them to have a good shot at making the playoffs. So they're not just throwing in the towel and just trying out a bunch of young guys to give them reps to get some tape on it because the season's probably lost. So that could hinder Luther Burden, but I expect him as now we're past the halfway mark. I expect him to get on the field a little bit more and be a guy to watch, especially if there's a possible injury. Those are guys that you're getting to the end of the year. You know what you have with your teams a lot of the time for most of the players. You can cut some bait and it's worth stashing a guy with a potential injury and a guy like Burden who has extreme upside. If Rome or DJ Moore were to miss time. Devin Singletary is another guy, right? We've seen him get more and more involved with the Tracy and him kind of splitting that backfield. He had a really, really nice reception for, I think, 40 or 50 yards yesterday. And Singletary, I'm not super excited, but look, injuries are going to start happening. It's going to be hard. You're not going to, the trade deadline's going to pass, and you're not going to be able to make moves, especially for running backs, which are harder to find. So Devin Singletary is available in less than 40%, or I'm sorry, 40% or less owned in fantasy leagues right now. So he's available in a lot of leagues. He's definitely worth stashing. Brandon Ayuk probably stashed in some leagues, but with injuries, I would check your leagues because there's a world where players and fantasy managers dropped Brandon Ayuk because of injuries, and they just didn't want to, hold him as an IR spot with other injuries that happen. Omar and Hampton owners, Bucky Irving owners, right? Like a lot of people that have had these players that have been sitting on their IR for a while. Joe Burrow owners. There's a possibility that those guys drop Brandon Ayuk and he might be available. So he's worth bringing up because Ricky Pearsall is still nowhere to be found. I mean, Brandon Ayuk might come back before Ricky Pearsall. I mean, heck, Brock Purdy's not even back. So I don't even understand what the 49ers and their injury management. It's super confusing. Last player, and then we're going to talk about some DSTs to stash. It's Jayden Reed. Jayden Reed's definitely worth it. I mean, we haven't seen Matthew Golden take that leap. He did get banged up and bruised up 2 weeks ago. We'll see how he fares tonight. But Jayden Reed's on his way, coming back soon. And I think he's worth taking a stash because, look, Jayden Reed, when he gets the ball in his hands, we know he can make plays happen. He was a top 10 guy in terms of fantasy points per touch last year. It's just a matter of those volume and opportunities not being there. But, with Christian Watson being back, with Matthew Golden being a guy that can stretch the field as well, Jayden Reed could get a lot of work underneath, especially with Tucker Kraft being gone. There's a need for a guy to work underneath and in the middle of the field. And Jayden Reed very much might be that guy that steps into that role with Tucker Kraft being gone. Last, the defenses, Bucks defense and Ravens defense are two defenses that right now I am stashing for the playoffs. Bucks have a really, really solid playoff schedule. Ravens have a good schedule overall the next, from here to the rest of the season. So those are two defenses that you should be stashing if you play with defenses in your fantasy football leagues. That's definitely two defenses that I am heavily targeting to throw on my bench if I have some extra space. But let's take a look and see if there's any questions at all before we get out of here, and we'll go from there. Let's see. We have Just Shorts Main in the house. He said, any chance I get your opinion on a trade I'm being proposed? Well, I don't know if you're still here, Just Shorts Main, but if you had sent that in, I would be answering it right now. So it does not look. Morgan Grimes in the house said Henderson looked explosive. Absolutely. And honestly, it's just one of those things where you kind of question a little bit with Vrabel, but they're winning. So, it's hard to question, what they're doing because it's turned into wins. And they're being patient. And I guess for us, we just have to accept that, right? It's not fantasy football, it's NFL football, but it's still pretty frustrating. And I hope that Henderson has made enough of an impression to solidify himself with getting more opportunities in this offense, because I think he's better than Stevenson. I don't think that's a question. Dennis in the house said, what's going on, you beautiful people? What's going on, Dennis? Good to see you. A1, what's going on, Alex? Said Bateman questionable, maybe likely pops off too. Yeah, that's definitely possible as well with the Bateman injury that he sustained. We'll see what happens. Likely could definitely, we know that both of this team likes to use two tight ends, and likely is a player that could very much be moved around, especially doesn't have to be the inline guy. He can be kind of put in the slot. So could very well be like you see like DeAndre Hopkins and like Walker kind of rotate in and out on that outside role. You have Zay Flowers as that move guy at the Z position. And then you have, kind of the tight end like Likely or Andrews kind of filtering in with two tight end sets, but one of them playing in the slot is definitely possible. Let's see. Can I link my sleeper league with the question? I definitely don't think that you can. I'm not gonna be able to pull it up. I'll give you a minute or two here to shoot me the question and I'll answer it. Just try to give me as much context as you can. But we have tonight's game here. I'll talk a little bit about it. We have the Eagles versus the Packers. I think the Packers win this one. I think coming off of a tough loss, an embarrassing loss against the Carolina Panthers this past week, I think Packers come here at home. And I think they win, right? Eagles, look, they are coming off of a bye, so they had extra time to scout. Maybe they come out flat. It's very possible. But I think Packers are going to run the football a ton. I think this is a big night for Josh Jacobs. When you look a little bit about, the insights in this game and just the matchup in general with the Eagles-Packers right now, the spread is sitting at minus 1.5. So on a neutral site, Eagles would be favored per Vegas. Total is 45.5. From an Eagles offense standpoint, Their overall rushing efficiency has been pretty good this year. I know it hasn't led to Barkley being awesome, but they're number 3 in overall rushing efficiency. Packers offense, overall pass efficiency, number 1. Eagles, number 11 at defending pass efficiency. So we'll see how that goes. And then pressure rate, right? Eagles not getting a lot of pressure, only 7. They're bottom half of the league, which is kind of surprising when you think about this team. They've been heavily built on the trenches, and they just haven't generated a ton of pressure this season. Dennis Rodriguez said, who is a good trade target at wide receiver to swap out Ayuk for? I mean, it depends. Are you trade? I mean, so you'd be dropping Ayuk and you're looking to target some players. I mean, to me, I think Zay Flowers is somebody that comes to mind. Obviously no Bateman, but Flowers is somebody who I don't know. I've bought into him more and more this year. So I think he's somebody I would try to target depending on, what people, what your owners in your leagues are thinking. Let me see if there's anybody here. I'm just taking a look at the recent, just numbers and points per game. Let me come back to that. Joe Taylor said Loveland or Fannin next week. I don't even have the schedules in front of me, so I couldn't even tell you. It's so early, Joe. Loveland and Fannin. I mean, Fannin's looked really good. Loveland has obviously been pretty good as well. Let's see, NFL Week 11. Check out the schedule just to take a look and see. So Bears play the Vikings. They've had some injuries there. Vikings on the defensive side of the ball. So that could be better for the tight end position for Loveland. And then if we look at Harold Fannin and the Browns, who do the Browns play? Browns are playing. Do I see the Raiders? No, the Browns are playing the Ravens. Yeah, I'm probably likely going to lean Loveland because I think it's more of a competitive game, but you could also make the case for Fannin if you think there's going to be a lot of garbage time. But I think that game could be decently tight, just not a lot of points. Let's see, being offered Brian Robinson and Harvey for Jamar Chase. I have Dobbins. No, oh my gosh, no, don't do that. That's not good. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with Dobbins. Even if Dobbins is out for the year, you're not making this deal. Joe Burrow designated to come back. Jamar Chase has been awesome, even with Flacco. Without Burrow, I wouldn't even entertain it. That's a disrespectful offer. Jones had down 51 points. Have Saquon Barkley, Devonta Smith, Goddard going tonight. You think I have a shot? I definitely think you have a chance here. I worry a little bit. I don't know that this game's going to be as high scoring as we would hope. 45.5 points is the total. But I think Devonta Smith is one guy that I'm really, really excited to see tonight. I think he has a big game. So that's one guy that I'm penciled in. And Barkley and Goddard Goddard's been probably more consistent for his position relative to what Barkley's done. But I think 51 points, I mean, between those three guys is definitely doable. You really just need two of them to score a touchdown and then just be involved, and you should definitely clear 51 points. That should definitely be doable. Going back to Dennis Rodriguez's question in terms of wide receivers to target right now if you're looking to trade. I don't know if this is Dynasty. I'm going to assume it's redraft right now. Let me take a look here. So Shaheed's a little bit interesting, right? Didn't have a big game coming off of, his first game with Seattle, but they were kind of out of it for a while. Alec Pierce is one, I would say. With Alec Pierce right now, you're talking about a guy that, has been a wide receiver 2, a low-end wide receiver 2 over the last 4 weeks, 14.9 fantasy points per game from PPR standpoint, 8.75 targets per game for Alec Pierce over the last 4 weeks. So Alec Pierce is definitely somebody I would be considering, targeting if I'm making a trade. I wouldn't target Troy Franklin, but it depends on what we're talking about here. If you're talking about swapping out for Ayuk, I assume Ayuk's not on your IR because otherwise you wouldn't be dropping him to make space. But I would say Alec Pierce is probably my favorite guy that I would like to target. Zay Flowers is another guy where, he hasn't been the best over the last couple of weeks, but some of that had to do with just the hindrance of the quarterback position. But Zay Flowers over the last 3 weeks, 12.53 fantasy points per game, still averaging 6.67 targets per game and 5 catches per game. So I would probably take a look. Dennis said it's Dynasty. He's on the IR. I have a contender but need more depth at wide receiver. Yeah, I mean, I would see, man, you might be able to do like, I mean, it depends what people value Ayuk for, right? I mean, if this was before the injury, like you're talking about a guy that's valued as a first round pick. I mean, a first round pick, but Ayuk's probably valued at a second right now. So maybe you can get Alec Pierce in a third if you want to contend. I think that could be a solid move. Man, it's tough. I mean, it's hard to know what your roster looks like. If we're talking about being a true contender, maybe you can swap Ayuk for Stephon Diggs. Diggs is up there in age. Ayuk is younger. If you're talking to a rebuilder, so that could be a possibility. If you're looking for a really, really strong upside, right, you're going to have to swing harder, right? Talking about Ayuk and like a first round pick for, maybe a veteran player like that like a Jalen Waddle, maybe Ayuk in a first for Jalen Waddle could be a possibility. So those are the kinds of things I would be taking a look at if I was trying to make a trade as a dynasty contender. Robert Page in the house. What's going on, Robert? You just caught us as we're getting ready to close out, but that's going to do it for me, guys. Thank you so much for the chat. Everybody that sent in their questions, comments, make sure you make sure you subscribe, and you're checking out all the content here at Player Profiler. If you have any games going on tonight where you have players in those matchups, good luck to you. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to playerprofiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, data analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.